There you go, Jake. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So really, I want this to be more of a conversation than anything else. As Michele said, this is a passion of mine. I've had the opportunity I started investing in real estate back in 2008 with my father. Fast forward 21. Actually, right after this, we go close on another duplex. Last week, we closed on 2 investments in 2 different apartment complexes. So we're still moving forward with that piece of it. And yet today we're sitting right around 55 units. We've got a vacation rental up in the mountains, and then these 2 apartment complexes that we're minority investors in. So that's kind of my world. I am a bold coach. I'm a MAPS coach. I coach other coaches. I own 3 market centers, the OP of 2 of those, property management company, 7-level real estate team, blah, blah, blah. Really cool part is I got 5 kiddos. My wife and I have been married, 24 years now. So all that's the fun part. Really what my driving piece, and I think that's the biggest key, is we all have to have a why. And when we first started this process, the joke was on us a little bit, because I looked at my wife and I said, hey, what if we take $75,000 and somebody else could pay our mortgage payment for the rest of our lives? And that was really how it started, right? We're all salespeople. I sold my wife on that idea. 8 months later, little did we know we'd have those assets that would cover our mortgage payment. And then that goal just grew and grew. And it got to a point where we realized, like today, I've got 2 kids in college. It was, how do we create the passive income that will pay for our kids' college so they don't have to worry about carrying the loans, and they could attend the schools they wanted to attend. And that really became the focus. And here we are today. My kids get to go to school they want to go. We don't have the stress of how are we going to pay for it, which allows them to really enjoy it. So that's the story as it progresses. There's a lot more to it. And what I really want to do is open this up to y'all, questions, answers, and make this about you. I can talk all day about how to do it, where to start, and yet what questions and what curiosities do you have about the whole thing?
Where do you look for investments? Where's your key areas?
Great
And
question.
how do you know it's going to be a hold or one that you sell?
So the fun part about, and I'm going to pop a link in the chat. This is a tool that we've used. Now we've modified it a little bit to meet our needs. However, this is a free tool. It comes from Keller Inc. It's actually out of the whole book. And this is how we both look at the performance of a property, see if it's going to meet the expectations and standards that we have. And it's also what we do is we look across different markets. So for a long time, we were really here in Denver. The cash flow made sense, the profitability made sense, and that's kind of where we went. We got to a point in Denver, recently when we did this 1031 exchange we're working on right now, we had bought a 4-plex, a triplex, and 2 duplexes for about $750,000 all in. Now, here's the fun part. Take that, we put 25% down on it. So do the math, right? We're about $160,000 all in. And yet we took that 160 grand, bought these properties, turned around and sold them 5 years later for 2.3 million. Exchange that 2.3 million into these other investments that we currently are buying and continue to roll that money in. Now, here's the fun part. Those were in Denver. And I don't know about you all, Denver's gone crazy, just like most of the other areas in the country. We were up like 16-17% last year. We went to a place called Pueblo, which is 2 hours south of Denver. It's just a smaller community where we were able to pick up duplexes, triplexes, 4-plex. We bought an 8-plex that met the goals and the standards that we had set for our investing. And for us, it's about cash flow first and then appreciation. And the reason why that's so important is many people will buy for appreciation and maybe lose out on the cash flow. So they may be a little bit underwater, or they may be at a break even, trusting that the cash flow is going to take over. In my world, that's like going to Vegas. And if that's what you're going to do, let's go to Vegas together and spend your money. I'm good with that. However, what we learned is if we can invest for cash flow first at the expectation of return that we desire, appreciation will take care of itself over time. As far as out of state, there's a question there. Yes, we've looked at St. Louis, Kansas. We've looked in Tulsa, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Indianapolis. There's a lot of great markets.
Congratulations.
Somebody needs to mute.
A teacher.
There we go. So we've taken this spreadsheet through this process. We've actually pulled up, as simple as it sounds, KW.com, pulled out the information from our app, gone through and looked at the different properties that are available, ran the numbers. I tend to like duplex, fourplex, multi-units because if one unit goes vacant, 9 times out of 10, it's still covered. And this is what we've coached our clients to do. Our new clients, first-time home buyers, we take them out, we help them buy a duplex or a fourplex, let their neighbor pay for the mortgage. They get to live their mortgage free, have them save both the earnings and what they would normally pay as a mortgage. A couple years later, do it again, couple years later, do it again. And we just have to find our way to the point where they're okay in their spot in their 20s, early 30s, where they're good.
This is the most important sacrifice.
So yeah, there are opportunities everywhere. It may not be in your city or in your area. Just keep your eyes open and talk to other investors.
Perfect. Jim, make sure you mute yourself, please. Okay, I just got her. Okay, so another question. What was your biggest mistake you've done?
So our biggest mistake, we bought a fourplex that we thought was going to be a great deal. The numbers worked out incredible. We bought it for $275. This was back in the day of short sales and all that fun stuff. So we picked this fourplex up for $275. Kind of our world is if we can get 2 to 1. So we look at debt service ratios. So if our mortgage is $1,500, what I'm looking to get is about $3,000 in rents. So in this case, our mortgage was $1,200. We're going to pick up $4,000 in rents. Sounds phenomenal. After expenses and after some other things that continue to show up, a year and a half in, we've made a whole, like whopping all in $2,200. That was our profit. $275. So we decided 18 months later just to sell it, get rid of it, 1031 exchange, see what else goes on. So we sold it for $425 18 months later. So as much as we didn't make a whole lot of cash on the cash flow side, we walked out with $150,000. So what I like to tell people is it's really hard to mess up in real estate as long as your debt service ratios make sense, so you're covered because of what happens with real estate. If it turns out to be a bust, just sell it and go find something else.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Do you work with a lot of investors?
I do. We do about, when the market was great number, we were doing about $15 million a year in volume in just investor business. Now we still do about 6 million. We refer a ton out to our investor partners, both in Pueblo and St. Louis, and other areas across the country, which is nice because they help them do all the work. We actually walk that client through some of the process and we receive the referral fee. And that's one of those pieces that we do.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. There's a question here. It says, how do you protect yourself legally when working with seasoned investors?
So there's a couple of things we do. In Colorado, we have the buyer agency agreement, and we don't work with anybody if they don't sign a buyer agency agreement. And the reason for that is that in Colorado, that's what gives us the ability to negotiate on their behalf. The other thing what we talk to our investors about is, yes, we're active investors ourselves. However, what we've decided to do is when we find those great deals, we pass them on to our investor partners first. If they pass on those deals, then we'll run with them. And it's just a matter of how we built that reputation. And there's some great deals that they walk away from, or they may not have the ability or the cash flow at that time to make a move. And we're able to step in and help that. It's honestly, as far as protection, we've worked with our attorneys to make sure that we have the proper information in place. There was a couple of times where we bought our own listings that were short sales or foreclosures. And with those, there were specific instructions that our attorney gave us to make sure that we're included in the contract. And typically when that happens, it was because a buyer backed out. It was going to go to foreclosure sale in 7 to 10 days. And we had the capital to be able to step in, pick up that property at the agreed price before it went to foreclosure.
Got it. Got it. That's awesome. Anybody? Don't forget to keep on. Oh, there we go.
Great question. Steve asked, do you refer yourself out when I'm buying? Yes. Now here's what I do. I take that referral fee, like the one we're closing today. Instead of taking it as a commission, I actually ask them to reduce my closing costs by the same amount. And the reason I do that is it keeps cash in hand and I don't have to pay the taxes on what I would have received as a commission. I don't know about you. Part of the reason why I love investing in real estate is because I don't like paying taxes. So there's a lot of ways that have been structured within that to allow us to do that. Great book on that is Tax-Free Wealth. Highly recommend it. Tax-Free Wealth. It's by John Wheelwright. He's actually Robert Kiyosaki's tax advisor. And what he teaches is of the 5,000 pages in the tax acts, basically, that are written every year, the first 5 pages or so tell you how much to pay. The last 4,995 tell you how to get out of it.
Wow.
So you want to work with somebody who understands the 4,995, not just the first 5 pages. It's called Tax-Free Wealth. Awesome book. Yes, he goes into real estate. He also talks about other benefits of other assets that you could own to make that happen.
Perfect. Okay, there's another question here. What amount of cash flow do you want to see come through in each property? Do you have a formula?
I do. So I use that spreadsheet I gave you. Well, one of the pieces we added was a cash on cash return. So basically what that means is if I'm going to put $50,000 in as a down payment and say repairs and maintenance up front, I want to see a 15 to 20% return on that cash. So after expenses, after everything else, if I've got say $7,500 to $10,000 coming in the door, I know that that's a good piece on my end. And what that really looks like is if you're in the stock market and you get a 20% return or a 15% return, that's awesome. In real estate, when you get a 20 or 15% return, meaning you're going to receive that cash and you still have the asset that you hold on to, it's like getting a 15 to 20% dividend, because you don't have to sell the asset to make the money. What you get to do is take that dividend and continue to hold the asset. So what I always tell people is if you can find me a stock that's going to pay a 15 to 20% dividend and I don't have to sell it to gain it, I'm in.
That's great. Okay, there's another one right here. Oh, thank you so much, Adam. Adam put the link to the books in the chat. What kinds of loans do you take out and how much do you put down typically?
That's always fun. So we typically put 20 to 25% down. That's more because that's what my wife had asked to minimize the risk. So, you do what you need to do to make sure that piece is good. When we first started buying, we could have started with 10% down because of the expectations and the agreement that we had with our spouses and my mom. We started with 20%. And the reason for that was we're in a really uncertain market. Properties are actually declining in value instead of appreciating. So we started with 20% down, and that was with just your typical Fannie Freddie 30-year fixed note. That worked out great until we got to 10 properties. Once you have 10 properties, you no longer qualify typically for a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac note. So you have to look at alternative sources. We went to local banks, commercial banks here in Denver that had these types of assets that they actually held the note on that would give us the ability to go out using a commercial note and purchase the properties. So now what we do primarily when we do pull loans is go through a commercial note through a local bank. And what that looks like typically, like the one we're closing on today, is at 3.5%, 25%. Actually, this one we're putting 35% down, yet typically they only require 25. So 3.5%, 35% down, and it is a 7.25. So it's a 7-year fixed rate, 25-year amortization. It'll adjust after the 7th year. So our intention is to have it all paid off within those 7 years through the cash flow received with our other properties. And that's the thing. I mean, we've got 55 doors or so, and we have 5 notes. That's it.
Wow. That's amazing. I believe there's another question here.
Do I invest with my family or put it in a trust? Yes and yes. So my father's my partner in this situation. It is held in LLC, and we also have a family trust and wills. So my wife and I have a trust that delegates where this goes, how it's utilized, and how it works. Yes, it costs some money. It's 100% worth it. My father and I are investors in this company. Our vacation rental company that we own, my wife and I are the partners in that one, and we work that piece together.
So the vacation property, is that near, tell us about that. Is that something that you rent out, or?
So as my 11-year-old likes to say, somebody else pays for our penthouse.
There you go. I like
So
that.
it's a really nice place. It's up in Keystone. It's in the ski area. It's actually in the main village, about 200 yards from the lift. It's 4-bed, 3.5-bath penthouse, almost 2,000 square feet, and beautiful spot, overlooks everything. At the end of the day, so far through July, our gross rents receivable on its home is $64,000. With what we have rented out through the rest of the year, it'll be about 140 grand. Our
Wow.
expenses on that are about $72,000 a year.
So not bad.
So I'll take that all day. We'll use that to pay it off and let somebody else pay off our place, and off we go. We'll do it again.
That is great. Christy has a question here. Hang on. How do you pick your location for your starter or STR?
For my starter, it was all about cash flow. And there's a comment in there about bigger pockets. Yes, and yes, and yes, it's helpful. They go through a lot of different scenarios, a lot of different ways to do that. There's some that as licensed agents, we have to be cautious with. However, definitely pay attention. They do some great stuff. How did I pick both? Start with our long-term holds. It was about cash flow for us. And honestly, in 2008, I don't know if anybody's around in 08, our market was tanking. I mean, we were losing 8 to 10% a year, not going up, going backwards. So we found a place. We had foreclosures all over the place in Colorado and in Denver. We found this little 2-bed, 1-bath house. It was 720 square feet with a 1-car detached garage that was trashed, built in the 50s. It was listed for $55,000. We negotiated with the bank, got it down to 50 grand. They covered our closing costs. We put 20% down. So my dad and I combined, we're looking at 10 grand, so 5,000 each. We had another 5 to 10,000 that we had to do in repairs and maintenance before we could lease it out. So we're each about $7,500 to $10,000 out of pocket. It was the scariest 10 grand I have ever spent.
I can only imagine.
I kind of laugh about it. I don't know about you guys. Anybody ever spent $7,500 on a vacation? Right? You go to Disney, you go wherever, you're going to drop $7,500. Today, no big deal. However, 12 years ago, 10 grand was a ton. So it was a matter of taking that risk. Here's a cool part. 2 weeks later, my kiddo, Caleb, had a soccer tournament just down the way from this. Every time I put a sign in the yard on the way in, got a million phone calls, basically said I'll be there at 2, open house style. There was a line out the door. We rented that $50,000 place that we bought for $900 a month. And that's when I fell in love. Our mortgage payment on it was $232.
Wow.
And that's when I realized it was going to work. So part of it's just taking the first step. Do your homework, get to know the area, look at what you're looking at as far as returns, and then take that first step. The first step is always the scariest. The second piece, as far as our vacation rental, our short-term rentals, long story short, we would do vacation rentals on the beach, and we've done vacation rentals in the mountains in the winter. So we live in Denver. We're going to buy a vacation rental on the beach. We're looking in the mountains. I looked at my wife and my kids and I said, where do you want to start first? And the response was, we'll go to the mountains more than we'll go to the beach. So let's start in the mountains first. So we did. I wanted to start on the beach, FYI. And yet that's where we went. And that's how it started. We're currently looking at places on the beach. Over Thanksgiving, actually, we're going down to Costa Rica to look at places down there. And yet that was really, it came back to what's the return? Because that's the other thing you have to watch, especially in vacation rentals. Where we're at, there's a bunch of vacation rentals. Most of those places are 2 bedrooms. So they rent out for a minimal amount, and they, what we found was that the property we bought wasn't being managed professionally by a vacation rental company. It was just managed by Keystone. So we switched over to a vacation rental company, and it's a luxury company. Basically, they'll do your shopping for you. You name it, they'll have it there. If you want your skis and your boots ready, they'll have it there to be fitted. They partner with a downhill biking company, mountain biking company, where they'll put a $5,000 bike at your feet when you check in. So they'll take care of all that kind of stuff. It's more of a concierge piece. And because of that, because of the structure and the style of it, during the winter, we can rent that place out for $1,500 to $2,000 a night. Where before it was renting out for $950.
Wow.
So it's just understanding your market and understanding where you're at, and then running the numbers and being willing. We bought it in the middle of COVID. We didn't know it was going to happen. So we had to prepare. What if they shut the mountains down? What if those pieces happen? And because of the unique way the market worked, it was a lot of dovetail weekends. So it'd be like a Thursday through a Sunday, and we were open in the middle of the week. And at the end of the day, it still worked out.
Got it. Got it. You guys, any other questions?
Looks
Okay,
like there's
here we-
what other states we look at. St. Louis is great for multi-unit properties. Same with Indianapolis. Those 2 areas, there's some great opportunities. The cash flow makes sense, and they're pretty sweet. The concierge company that we use charges 20% of the total receivables. Here's the flip side. We need a new washer and dryer. He literally sent pictures of them and said, which one do you want us to get? We needed new blinds. He had his designer go up and give us 2 swatches and say, which one do you want? It takes all that decision-making off of us. And I don't know about y'all, that kind of stuff drives me nuts. It just does. Do I use a professional property manager? Yes. What I found is I'm the worst property manager because I'm the one that I'll believe that my daughter's sick and everything else, and let them get behind, and off we go. So we actually started our own property management company in Denver. We had 37 doors in Denver. So we used that as a seed money to start our own. Now we manage over 150 doors. And Pueblo, we got a buddy down there that also manages 200 doors, and he manages our stuff for us.
Got it. So you're breaking up with me, but I don't think anybody else is having the same issue. I'm here in the office, which is really weird because normally I don't have problems with it. Let me see if there's any other questions here. Did we already get through this? Because we broke up where I was at.
So far, can you all hear us good?
I think now, yeah. Good
What other
stuff.
questions do you have? I mean, I can talk forever about it. And yet, what else you got? What specific lenders do you use? Honestly, as our portfolio's grown, it's become more and more challenging for lenders. And the reason is, last time we did a refinance on our house, it was 12,000 pages of documents. It was tax returns from each one of my businesses, full tax returns, which is, we own 12. It was tax returns and depreciation schedules for all of our properties, which they then add back so they can get a true picture of what your income is. It was bank statements for the last 2 months for all of those same assets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. By the time we were done, it took about 3 months and they got it done. That's if you're going for just a regular typical 30-year fix. Now, the flip side is our commercial banks on the other side. I can give them a deal. They'll go out and do an appraisal. As long as it makes sense and the debt service ratios make sense, they don't care about my income. And the reason is because they're doing their lending on a net worth basis, not based on how much I make.
Got it. How many properties do you analyze before you land a good one? How much time do you normally spend analyzing the properties, et cetera?
So the more you do it, the easier it is to find it. So that spreadsheet I gave you, and I think Gary said this family reunion or somewhere in there. He said, go through and analyze it 50, 100 times. Just take a handful of properties. And as you start to look, you'll start to get a good feel for what they're looking at. A good rule of thumb is, let's say the house is for sale. Like we're buying one today. It's a duplex for $490,000. The rents on each side are $2,500. So we're making $5,000 a month on a $490,000 property. Well, if you take that and annualize it, it's 60 grand. As long as it's 1% or 10% or less, or more, I should say, of the purchase price. So in this case, 49 grand or higher, most of the time that's going to give you the performance that you're looking for with 20 to 25% down. So it's just a simple, quick rule of thumb. And then from there, I mean, if you're in this case, it's 490. If it was looking at a 45,000, we'd probably still run it and it would still make sense. So it's understanding what to look for, working through that. The flip side is also, you may find places that are under rented right now. Because of COVID, we didn't go through and renew our leases. We just went on to month because it was a way that we could protect our investments through a new lease. So we weren't kicking people out because they weren't making payments. They just refused to sign the new lease. It didn't happen very often. And luckily we were in a spot where we could work with folks and take care of them. And yet that was part of it.
Right. Okay. Can you paste that into the group chat for us? For some reason, some people can't find it.
Oh,
And
yeah.
for some reason, I can't cut and paste it in the chat box, if you will.
There it is.
There you go. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, so you guys, this is very rare that we get to have Jake. So let's make sure we're asking all the questions that have been going back and forth.
You got a great question there, Bailey. For a new agent, how do you start? Yes. Number one, start. Number two, yes, grab a mentor. There's plenty of folks out there, myself, other agents in your area that invest. And we're more than happy to sit down with you, share with you what we went through. That's how I started. I had a family friend. He was actually one of my father's friends who had 82 properties.
Wow.
And I took him to lunch and I said, this was back in 2002. And I said, tell me the story. And how did it work? Because the guy, he and his wife would go like scuba diving twice a month off of Costa Rica and Belize. I'm like, okay, how'd this work out? And he told me the story. He told me how he did it. When we got into the vacation rental game, I was actually sitting in a top 100 mastermind with Gary Keller. And Gene Arant was next to me. He and I were talking and he found out I was buying investment properties. And Gene says, hey, hold on. I need to meet my friend. And I turned around and there's Jim McKissick. Now, I don't know if y'all know the McKissicks, top profit share earners in our company. And he says, Jim, this is Jake. Jake's got 35 doors right now. What do you suggest? And Jim says, pay him off. Once you get them paid off, go buy vacation rentals. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, when they're paid off, you're good. Now you can go take more risk and go buy investment properties or vacation rentals. So again, it's who do you surround yourself with that helps you think bigger and then helps you see those opportunities.
Mhm.
How do I find an agent to work with another state? There's a handful of qualifications I look for. Number one, are they also investors? I want to find an agent who's also an investor in the area. Number two, do they have access to a great property management company? Number three, do they have access to great contractors? And number four, they have access to a great lender that can do commercial type loans because we don't qualify for your regular Fannie and Freddie. So 4 things: they got to be an investor. They have to have access to a great property management company, great contractors, and a great lender.
Jake, the link you keep on sending is a book.
Yes.
It's not the spreadsheet.
So if you go down to the bottom, the tools are at the bottom, and that's where you'll see the 30 and the 15-year spreadsheets.
Oh, okay, because everyone's like, no, they can't find it. Okay. Perfect. Okay, we've got more questions here. You mentioned replacing leases. You moved into a month-to-month. You had the reason of them not signing to have them move out.
Yep. So this is going to be based on your own market and your own laws. In Colorado, as long as I give them a 30-day notice with the new lease, if they choose not to execute that new lease at that new rate, then all I have to do is serve a 30-day notice for non-compliance, and they're out because of the non-renewal. So at that point, I was able to get around the concept of if they are unable to pay because of COVID, that we couldn't let them go. So we didn't have to do it very often. We only had 2 that we had to work with. And the reason why wasn't because they weren't able to pay with COVID. It's because they were collecting unemployment and buying new cars and not paying their rent. So when we started to see that game getting played, obviously we made a choice and a decision that you can afford to pay the rent, you're just choosing not to. And the other thing was they were also letting the house go down the tubes. So at that point, we had to make a decision. There's a few things in there: paying off rentals versus paying off your primary. My father's a CPA, he's also my business partner, so that makes for a really good deal. The way we chose to pay off our rental properties is we actually did cash out loans as they moved up and paid them all off with 3 or 4 mortgages that we all just pulled out. Number one, it made it easier. Number two, it reduced our payments substantially because we reduced the rates. The flip side is we may or may not pay off our primary. The cash flow we receive more than covers those expenses. So there's tax benefits to not paying off your primary. Again, it goes back to your own personal risk level and what your risk tolerance is. When we looked at it, we'll run through some fast math. I'll go quick, have some fun with it. And yet you buy a $400,000 place, you put 100 grand into it. That $400,000 place, 100 grand into it. Let's say your mortgage payment's $1,500 with today's rates. You're renting it for 3 grand. So I make $18,000 a year after expenses. You divide that by the 100,000, I'm making an 18% return, basically. So you take the 18,000, 18% return. So write down 18 grand. The next step is this: you've got a $300,000 mortgage, and the tenant is going to pay that mortgage down at about 2% a year, 2.5% a year. So that's another $7,500 in reduced mortgage. And then let's say it appreciates at 6%. So now at 6% appreciation, let's go 5 just to be conservative. That's another 20 grand. So at the end of the first year, just with appreciation, no pay down, and cash flow, you're at 45,000 bucks. So you're actually at an all-in return of about 45 to 50%. And here's where the magic happens. You buy a $400,000 house. I'm going to grab my calculator really quick. You buy a $400,000 house. You get to depreciate that property over 27 and a half years. And what that means is that over the course of 27 and a half years, at the end of that time, it's useless. Well, we all know that houses last longer than that, yet this is an opportunity we have through the tax laws to create that benefit. So if I take $400,000 and I depreciate it by 27 and a half years, that means I'm going to depreciate or claim as a loss $14,500. So the 18 grand I just made, instead of getting taxed on all 18,000, let's say you're taxed at a 30% rate, so or even a 40% rate, let's say that's 6, 7, 8,000, you're going to subtract the 18 from the 14,500, which means you get taxed on $3,500 instead of 18,000. So it reduces your tax liability to about a grand from 7,000, and you just save $6,000 in taxes. Do I buy other properties through the trust? Yeah, the vacation rental, actually, our trust owns that vacation rental company, and my wife and I are co-owners of the trust. Cost segregation for depreciation. Now we're getting advanced. What cost segregation is if you were to take the property, take all the screws and nails out of it, turn it upside down and shake it, the cabinets, the carpet, all that kind of stuff that would fall out, you can actually depreciate over 5 years. And actually about 6 years ago, they've changed it. So you could do advanced depreciation over 1. So you can actually have 2 different layers of depreciation, which could completely wipe out the earnings that you're going to get and zero it out. This is where the difference between having a CPA or an accountant that says, I'm not going to get you put in jail, and a CPA that says, I'm going to stand beside you if you ever get audited, because my job is to minimize your tax liability, because they understand the other 4,995 pages. That's the difference. So find somebody who's willing to be a tax advisor, not just an accountant.
That's amazing right there. That's really good. Very good.
And Gary said this was a few years back at Family Reunion. He said, when he was talking about falling in love with real estate again, this was one of the reasons why is this is what we do. We see these properties every day. And what he suggests is we should be purchasing one rental property a year as agents. Well, if you do that over the course of 15 years and you pay those things off over the course of 30, you can retire and you're done. The challenge is so many of us create this limiting belief that we don't have the cash. The reality of it is, if you find the right deal, and Gary said this from the stage, if you find the right deal, you'll find the cash. You'll find a partner that can help you with the cash if you find the right deal. You just have to open yourself up to the existence that this happens. Number one, and when you do find the right deal, tell everybody about it, because they'll be able to help connect you with the cash to make that happen. The other thing that I always teach people is start with a budget, figure out where your money's going so you can start to hold it accountable. And the challenge is, as we start to increase our income, we start to increase our lifestyle to match that income. The reality is this: what are you willing to sacrifice today so that you can build this asset base up so you don't have to sacrifice tomorrow? We took that initial $7,500 on that first property, and what we make on that property pays for all of our vacations every year, because we chose to take a break for 1 year and invest in real estate. There's all sorts of other stories I could tell you about that. But the reality is, what are you willing to sacrifice today to get where you want tomorrow?
That's a very good question.
Who should you have on your teams? Great question, Minerva. CPA, lenders, attorneys that understand real estate. When I say CPA, it's more of an advisor as well. Real estate agents, other investors that can help you out. The other piece I would say is you've got two types of attorneys. You've got attorneys to protect you in lawsuits, because that will show up. You also have an attorney that can help you draft all of your leases, your documentation, that will actually help you in the event that you have to kick somebody out, evict somebody. They'll go to court on your behalf. And then obviously have a trust advisor, have other folks, because as you start to expand on those assets, Gary shared this in a mastermind recently, the greater your net worth becomes, the more likely you are to get sued. And it's not just once. So make sure you've got those assets protected and set aside so that if you get sued personally, your assets aren't available for that. Contractors, 100%, lenders, yes. I mean, all those folks that you're going to need. And honestly, as we put this together, it's something we also share with our clients. So we have HVAC folks, we've got plumbers, we've got general contractors, we've got roofs, painters, the whole 9 yards. And that's what we share with our clients is, hey, because of the volume we do with these folks, they're also willing to give you the same discounts. So with our 37 properties in Denver, over the course of a week, we have our HVAC go out, change out filters, clean furnaces before winter, the whole 9 yards. Does it at a discount? We reach out to our database and say, hey, this is the discount we've got set up. Pick a time, and we basically just chunk it into areas. And this guy will go out and he'll do a neighborhood at a time. And they're more than happy to do that because you're plunking them all in one spot and helping them be efficient.
I'm trying to see if we got everything. What's the one thing that we haven't asked you that you think, okay, they need to know this?
Have I thought about syndicating and taking on investors? My father and I've talked about that. Here's the funny thing. When we first started, I'm the oldest of 6. So tax season hit, all my siblings were getting tax returns. And I went to every single one of them and I said, hey, jump in, just reinvest your tax return. It's money you didn't expect anyway, just reinvest it. Every single one of them said no. Dad just took us all to Disney World. 33 of us.
Oh my gosh.
And when my siblings asked how he did it, his response was, our properties help pay for it. And they looked back and went, time out. 12 years ago, you said all it was going to take was this. What percentage of ownership would I have had? And when we started to share with them, again, it goes back to what could they have sacrificed back then, $4,000. to have a 5% ownership stake in something that's worth 15 million today.
Wow.
Experience with Keller Mortgage. They didn't know how to work with me because of how broad and how large our investor packages were. It's a very complicated deal. I would always use them, especially if it's your first handful of deals, and shop them, because they do understand that and they work with us as agents, especially with KW. And it's nice to get that discount and the $1,000 back.
I did my refinance with them and it was so smooth. It was awesome.
I've had a ton of our agents that have done especially as they offered the 0.25% discount, that did it and had a great experience with it. They also referred a lot of their clients to them and had great experiences. What I've learned is as it becomes more complex, that's where the challenge becomes. Someone throws in, am I accepting coaching clients? So I do a consultation. I own it's a consulting company that I work with high net worth folks like attorneys, stuff like that, a handful of agents who want to get started. It's an 8-week course. Feel free to reach out to me. We can talk more about it, what it looks like and how it can help you get started. And, at the end of the day, I also do it for my market centers for free. I actually start on August 30th with a whole nother subset. And I ask that their spouses are there as well, so that y'all are on the same page.
So you do classes though for the market centers outside of something like this, because this is a Q&A.
Yep.
So there is something that
100%. And what that class looks like is we start off with budget. As crazy as it sounds, we start off with your personal budget. We go into your personal balance sheet and your personal net worth. And even if it's in the negative, it's just to understand where you're at, because awareness brings that reality, which helps us make a change. And then we start to move forward with how to analyze the properties, what they look for how do you create the cash? Let's say you don't have the cash today to start buying holdings. How do you find the flips? How do you find those opportunities? And how do you flip to hold is what I like to call it. And what other options are available that we may not be aware of? And how can we find the money and the financing?
So what we were talking about the last team meeting was putting a group together, to do investments and things like that. It's kind of like another added value, right, from Keller Williams. And but there's a lot of high Ds, right? And so structuring that, I don't know. So maybe, what does this class cost? And what if we did it as a market center? Maybe you can send me some information on that. That'd be great.
You know what? I'll shoot you some info, Michelle. We can have that conversation because I'm more than happy to help you out with it. Honestly, it's a lot of fun. What it does is, the reason we space it out over time is because it gives you time. Somebody asked in the chat, it gives you that time to go take a look at some of these properties, do your own research, and then come back with what you've learned and also with the questions that you found. How do you find money to flip? Oh, that's another story. I know in Denver, there's a local lender that will do short-term notes at reasonable rates that will support a flip. They ask for a certain percentage of cash down on your end. They don't care where it comes from. So if you've got another investor, another partner that has the cash, you can partner up with this bank, do the work, turn around and split it, and you're good. And I'll give you an example. Like I've got a kiddo that he's actually applying tomorrow to go to Pacific Lutheran University up in Tacoma. They asked him to come play soccer. So he's super jazzed. They gave him a partial scholarship. We're super jazzed. And I pulled up and looked at houses around the school. I can buy a 6-bedroom, 3-bath house for $400,000, a block away from the school. Well, FHA will allow me to do a kiddie condo. Basically, we put it in his name. I co-sign 3.5% down. And then I could rent that back out to the soccer team that would cover the mortgage, allow for my son not to have the expense of putting my kids in, be it a condo or something like that. So it saves us money there. And then if we turn around and sell it after 3 years, we also get the increase, which helps offset the cost of college. So there's a million different ways to utilize this resource to make that happen.
I can't wait to get into this class with you.
It's fun.
Yeah.
And it's just, as you get further into it, you start to find those opportunities and those options.
Yeah, I probably have I'm trying to keep up with my texts and the questions because people are throwing things back and forth. And I'm like, okay. So, and I will get to all of you in a moment. Just be patient with me too, please. So okay, there's more questions here. Is there a book on that how to finance?
So, Millionaire Real Estate Investor gives you and shows you different ways to put those pieces together. Hold will help you with that piece, and so flip. There are a bundle of other resources that can help you. The reality of it is the simplest way to do it is take your commission, use your commission as an investment, and partner with another investor where you do the sweat equity, they may put up some of the cash, and then you split the profits.
Bigger Pockets have some good.
They've got some great books and some great ideas. An example, like the apartment complexes we just invested in, it comes through a Delaware statutory trust. It's what they call a DST. Basically what that does is it's a backup 1031 exchange option. So because we didn't have the ability to find the properties quick enough during the identification period, we took the rest of that, put it into a Delaware statutory trust that invests in multi-units. And I want to say one has 300 units in Tampa, the other one's out in Gainesville, Georgia. And it pays out about a 5% annual dividend along with the appreciation of the property when they sell it. And because it's a 1031 exchange, it's non-taxed.
I'm trying to see if there's any more.
Somebody asked me if we were ever going to sell our properties and take the profits. And my response was, no, I'm just going to leave that mess to my kids and let them deal with it. And the reality of it is currently there's a step up benefit as well, where if I were to die tomorrow, they basically step up the value of the property based on today's values. And then it starts over for our kids. So if it's worth 400, even though I bought it for 50 grand, then my kids actually start at 400,000. Now that's for now. We'll see if that changes. However, that's what exists today. And yeah, know about Delaware statutory trust for your clients right now. That we're actually doing a ton of it with small mom and pop investors that have 7 to 10 properties that just want to get out of it. So it's a great way for them to swap, maybe they've got $2 or $3 million and they go into a 5% dividend. They walk out with 150 grand that just shows up every year.
What was that called again?
It's a Delaware statutory trust.
There you go.
What other last questions do you have? Throw them out.
They're thinking. I can see it. I can feel it. All right. So you're going to send me some information on that and we'll get together and figure that out. I really appreciate that, Jake. It means a lot to me.
Again, it's a passion. It's something I've been doing for 13 years. A lot of the stuff I talk really fast through is because of that experience. And yet it doesn't mean that you couldn't do the same thing. It goes back to the simple conversation of time on task over time creates professionalism and creates that awareness. And that's, some of the stuff we found off market. We kind of walked into. And even when things were tight over the last couple of years, because of all the businesses we run and operate with COVID, we were still able to 1031 exchange and transfer funds into an eightplex, into a duplex, into our vacation rental that continue to offset some of those losses with cash flow. Second, okay, I'll give you the markets really quick. St. Louis, Indianapolis, Cleveland, Cincinnati, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Oklahoma City, Topeka, Kansas are just a handful that we've looked at. And then we buy a lot in Pueblo. Lexington, Kentucky is another great one. Yep. So Panhandle of Florida has been good. I've got a buddy who's buying $50,000 houses in Alabama right now that pay $800 a month in rent. So what you may not see in some of those markets is the appreciation, and it's all about cash flow. This is a game of cash flow.
That's awesome. I really appreciate you taking the time, my friend. And I'm looking forward to all of us getting together.
Yeah, I'll shoot you more information. We'll have that conversation. If you have any questions, Michelle's got my contact info. Feel free to reach out.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, y'all. Have a great day.
Take care. Happy Monday. All right, you guys, it's Monday. Monday. Anybody want to tout some listings real quick? Oh, thank you, Chrissy. Yes. And if there's other classes or anything else that you guys are thirsty for, let me know. Again, I would have to say the biggest response from that panel was amazing. So definitely, if there's something else that you're looking for, I mean, let us know. We can't bring it if you don't know. We do have a couple different classes coming up in September. One is doing your business all off this thing called iPhones. Sorry, yes, I believe it's just iPhones. She may mix it up with other things, but that's what she was saying. So it's all off of your phone, and that's going to be in the Lodi office, God willing, right? And we'll definitely do it on Zoom as well. And then over in the Manteca office, we're doing a listing class, and it's all going to be brought on from a productivity coach from Sacramento who's doing really high volumes in both of those areas. So if there's something else that you guys are desiring, let us know, please. So do you have a moment and we can like chat about listings if anybody wants to chime in and talk about their new listings? I saw a few of them come up. Anybody? You guys, tout your listings. Tout them. Okay. There was a contest that we were rolling with over on Facebook. The first person who can put in the chat box right now will also win something in addition to the raffle. What is it you need to post on all of your social media?
Your name, KW.
And what else, Janet? Ah.
Name, KW, and your DRE. Your DRE, your name,
Yep.
and KW.
Yep. Jem, you got that when I said chat box, but you never know. Yes, Arthur, perfect. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Happy Monday. Let's go get more listings. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.
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 Hello.
Hey, Danny. It's good to see you. Thank you, you guys. Thank you.